There is a small Greek island in the Aegean Sea where researchers arrived expecting to find what they always find when they study old people: sickness, frailty, decline. Instead, they found men and women in their 90s gardening on steep hillsides, dancing at village festivals, and every single morning, before they did anything else, brewing a cup of wild herbs they had picked with their own hands from the hillside outside their door. The island is called Ikaria, and according to the research, 1 in 3 people there lives into their 90s. Almost no one has dementia. Heart disease is rare. And the people who live the longest, the ones who hit 100, they all share one habit in common: not a pill, not a doctor's prescription. A cup of tea. That is where this video begins. Because what scientists have been quietly discovering over the last few decades is something that grandmothers in Okinawa, Japan, and shepherds in Sardinia, Italy, and village healers in India have known for thousands of years: that certain herbs consumed consistently as part of daily life do something remarkable to the human body. They slow the fire of inflammation, they protect the cells, they help the body clean itself. And when you look at the populations on Earth with the highest number of people living past 100, almost all of them share these plants in their daily lives. I want to walk you through the most important of these herbs today, not the trendy ones being sold in supplements right now, the real ones, the ancient ones, backed by both centuries of human use and increasingly modern science. We're going to cover a lot of ground, but I want to start by telling you where this research actually comes from, because that matters. The 5 places on Earth with the highest concentration of people living past 100 were identified by National Geographic fellow Dan Buettner and a team of scientists, demographers, and medical researchers. They called them the Blue Zones. Okinawa, Japan; Sardinia, Italy; Ikaria, Greece; the Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica; and Loma Linda, California. The Okinawa Centenarian Study, one of the longest-running population studies of aging in the world, has been running since 1975 and has examined over 1,000 centenarians. What they found is striking. Compared to people in North America, Okinawans suffer fewer breast and prostate cancers, less than half the colon cancers, and dramatically lower rates of heart disease and dementia. And researchers say the answer lies largely in what they eat, specifically the phytonutrient-rich plants and herbs at the center of their diet. When Buettner took samples of the wild herbs Ikarians use in their daily teas to pharmacologists in Athens, they found the same thing: anti-inflammatory, mildly diuretic, meaning they naturally lower blood pressure, and packed with antioxidants. That last part, the blood pressure effect, may explain why Ikaria has one of the lowest dementia rates on the planet. High blood pressure is one of the biggest risk factors for dementia. The herbs were quietly treating it every morning. Now, let's talk about the herbs. The first one is turmeric. In Okinawa, they call it uchin. And they don't just cook with it the way we do in the West. They drink it every morning. Copious amounts of turmeric tea, a golden warm cup that has been part of Okinawan life for generations. The Okinawa Centenarian Study specifically lists turmeric as one of the herbs consumed by centenarians there that plays a dual role, both as a food and a traditional medicine. And here is something remarkable that researchers Brad and Craig Wilcox, who have studied Okinawan longevity for over 50 years, discovered turmeric activates a gene called FOXO3. This gene is sometimes called the longevity gene. It helps cells clean up waste, it reduces inflammation in the body, and it signals damaged cells to destroy themselves before they can become cancerous. The active compound in turmeric is called curcumin, and if you've read anything about inflammation and aging, you've heard of it. Chronic inflammation is now understood to be the root cause of nearly every major age-related disease: heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes. Curcumin blocks the main switch that triggers that inflammation in the body. One thing almost nobody tells you: curcumin on its own is poorly absorbed. The Okinawans figured this out intuitively. They always used turmeric with other spices and in broths and teas. The scientific answer is black pepper. A compound in black pepper increases curcumin absorption by up to 2,000%. That pairing, turmeric and black pepper, is one of the oldest and most validated combinations in the history of herbal medicine. The second herb is astragalus. This one is going to surprise you. Astragalus has been used in traditional Chinese medicine for over 2,000 years. It is classified as one of the superior herbs, meaning herbs used not to treat disease, but to strengthen the body and extend life. And for most of that time, Western medicine looked at that claim and dismissed it. Then researchers started studying what astragalus actually does inside the cell. Your DNA has protective caps on the ends of each chromosome, called telomeres. Think of them like the plastic tips on the end of a shoelace. Every time a cell divides, those caps get a little shorter. When they run out, the cell can no longer divide. It ages, it dies, and so does the tissue it was part of. Telomere shortening is now recognized as one of the central hallmarks of biological aging. In 2024, a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial, the gold standard of medical research, published in the journal Nutrients and conducted by researchers at Université Paris-Cité and the Sorbonne, found that an astragalus-based supplement significantly lengthened telomeres in middle-aged adults over 6 months. The placebo group showed no change. The astragalus group showed measurable, statistically significant telomere extension. The researchers concluded that astragalus warrants further investigation for its potential in promoting health, extending life expectancy, and supporting healthy aging. 2,000 years ago, Chinese physicians said this herb extends life. In 2024, scientists in Paris confirmed something close to that in a clinical trial. Astragalus is traditionally consumed in China, simmered in soups and broths for hours, a slow extraction of the root into food, long before anyone knew what a telomere was. The third is one you almost certainly have in your kitchen right now: sage. On Ikaria, an 83-year-old beekeeper named Yorgos Stenos put it simply. He said, "Sage tea with garlic and honey was our penicillin. Our mother would prepare it if we had a cold or the flu." That is not just folk memory. That is lived knowledge passed down through generations of people who, by the data, live extraordinarily long and healthy lives. Ikarians drink herbal teas, rosemary, sage, oregano, wild mint, 2 to 3 times a day, not just when they're sick. That is what registered dietitian Elena Paravantes Hargit, who has spent years studying the Ikarian diet, told Well Plus Good. These are not occasional remedies, they are daily rituals. And here is what sage does that researchers now understand. It contains compounds called rosmarinic acid, chlorogenic acid, and specific flavonoids that have antioxidant activity and have been shown to protect against neurological disease, including dementia. The same compounds, in similar concentrations, appear in rosemary and oregano. The USDA compared the antioxidant activity of 39 commonly used herbs and found that oregano had 3 to 20 times higher antioxidant activity than the others tested. 3 to 20 times. These are not exotic, expensive herbs. They are growing wild on a Greek hillside. They are sitting in your spice rack right now. The fourth is reishi mushroom. In ancient China, it was called lingji, the mushroom of immortality. It was so rare and so valued that it was carved into the furniture of emperors as a symbol of eternal life. For most of history, that seemed like mythology. Then a 2021 study published in Aging Cell found that reishi mushroom extends lifespan in animal models by inducing autophagy. Autophagy is a process where cells clean out their own damaged parts, essentially a biological self-cleaning mechanism. The researcher Yoshinori Osumi won the Nobel Prize in 2016 for his work on autophagy. We now understand it as one of the most important anti-aging processes in the body. Reishi does this by inhibiting a pathway called MORE, the same pathway that caloric restriction inhibits, the same pathway that scientists studying fasting and longevity are deeply focused on. The mushroom essentially tells the body to go into a state of cellular maintenance, the same state triggered by periods of not eating. In Okinawa and in traditional Japanese medicine, reishi has been brewed into bitter tea for centuries. The taste is not pleasant, but the Okinawans drank it anyway. They knew something. The fifth is ashwagandha. India has a medical tradition called Ayurveda. It is over 5,000 years old. Within that tradition, there is a class of herbs called rasayana, herbs used specifically for rejuvenation and the extension of healthy life. Ashwagandha is considered the king of that class. What ashwagandha does is reduce cortisol. Cortisol is the stress hormone, and chronic stress, the kind that comes from a life lived in constant anxiety and pressure, accelerates aging at a measurable biological level. It shortens telomeres, it drives inflammation, it breaks down muscle. It impairs sleep, which is when the body repairs itself. A study published in PMC from the National Institute of Health confirmed that ashwagandha's active compounds called withanolides boost telomerase activity, the same enzyme that protects your telomeres. In Indian villages where ashwagandha grows wild and has been used daily for generations, elderly people consume it in warm milk at night. The practice is called golden milk, warm milk, ashwagandha, and turmeric, a combination that addresses inflammation, cortisol, and cellular aging simultaneously. No supplement company invented that combination. A civilization did, over millennia of observation. Now I want to talk about the pattern that I think is the most important thing in all of this research. Because if you look at Ikaria and Okinawa and Sardinia, 3 places on opposite sides of the world with different languages, different cultures, different histories, there is a thread, a single, quiet, consistent thread. Every single one of these populations integrates herbs into daily life as a ritual, not as a cure, not as a response to sickness, as a daily practice. The Ikarians pick herbs off the hillside in the morning and brew them fresh. The Okinawans drink turmeric tea before the sun is high. The Chinese who consume astragalus simmer it in broth for hours on the stove. The herbs are not the point. The daily relationship with the herbs is the point. There is a researcher who studied Sardinian centenarians in the village of Acciaroli, where the centenarian rate is reportedly 10 times higher than average. The study, cited by researchers at UC San Diego and the University of Sassari, found rosemary consumption to be one of the consistent features of the diet. Rosemary, growing wild on the hillside, thrown into every dish, brewed into tea. Rosemary's compounds, carnosic acid and rosmarinic acid, reduce oxidative stress and support circulation and brain health. One village, growing rosemary outside their door for 1,000 years. Scientists arrive, run their tests and say, the rosemary matters. Let me also tell you about green tea, because the Okinawan version of it is not what you find in a box at the grocery store. Okinawan elders drink a tea called sampin, which is jasmine green tea, high in a specific antioxidant compound called EGCG. This compound, epigallocatine gallate, is one of the most studied anti-aging molecules on Earth. It activates autophagy, the same cellular self-cleaning process triggered by reishi. Higher consumption of green tea has been associated with lower risk of all-cause mortality in Japanese populations, particularly for cardiovascular and cerebrovascular disease. They don't drink 1 cup, they drink it all day, slowly. Green tea in Okinawa is not a health intervention. It is how you sit with your neighbor in the afternoon, and that is something no study can fully measure. The combination of beneficial plant compounds and genuine human connection shared daily across a lifetime. Here is what I want you to take away from all of this. The science is real. The telomere research on astragalus was published in Paris in 2024. The Nobel Prize for Autophagy. The process activated by Reishi green tea was awarded in 2016. The anti-inflammatory mechanisms of curcumin and the antioxidant activity of oregano have been studied, confirmed, and published in peer-reviewed journals. But the people living past 100 were not doing it because they read the studies. They were doing it because their grandmothers showed them, because the herb grew outside the door, because every morning before the world got loud, they made a cup of something warm from the earth and they drank it slowly, and they did it again the next day and the day after that for the rest of their very long lives. What modern science is discovering is not new knowledge. It is ancient knowledge finally being verified. And the question it leaves you with is a simple one. What grows outside your door? What has your culture been brewing that you have forgotten to drink? Because somewhere between the speed of modern life and the promise of the next pharmaceutical breakthrough, we stopped paying attention to the plants. The plants that have been quietly keeping people alive for centuries, waiting patiently to be remembered. Start with one, just one. Brew it tomorrow morning. Then the morning after that. Not as a challenge. Not as a 30-day experiment. As the beginning of a relationship that, if the oldest people on earth are any guide, could last a very long time.